The roster of the boys' twisted version of the Avengers/Justice League changes constantly, but how well does the Seven match up to their comic book counterparts? They've both stayed faithful and made some big changes, so let's take a closer look. I'm Greg Elliott with Screen Rant, and here's how the Seven look in the comics compared to how they look on the show. So let's start with Homelander. Personality-wise, Anthony Starr's version is very similar to the comics and maybe even worse, considering on TV he's fully responsible for acts that he was framed for in the comics. And the look is pretty spot on too. He's got the same blonde hair, blue eyes, and the costume is almost identical, although maybe a little more padded on TV.
I'm sorry, I appreciate the effort, but I'm fine with my old outfit.
In terms of costumes, Starlight is also largely identical to her comic book counterpart, both in terms of her original and Vought's more risque redesign. Erin Moriarty's got the same blonde hair and also has a little bit more attitude than the often forlorn Starlight on page. Queen Maeve changes it up a bit, where in the comics her costume is a bit more blue than maroon, a bit more revealing, and she has blonde hair rather than red. Their personalities are similar, but TV Maeve does seem to have a bit more good in her, stepping up to help the girls get it done when they need. The Seven's resident speedster A-Train was race-swapped in the show, and Jesse Usher sports short hair and a goatee rather than the clean-shaven boy band look from the comics. The comics version is more muscly and more perverted, and while their outfits have the same color scheme, the design is different, with comic A-Train sporting a big A on his chest and no sleeves, and TV A-Train looking a bit more plasticky.
Lately, some of you have been downright sloppy. Not you, Noir. You've been great.
For a character who doesn't talk and whose face you can't see, Black Noir is actually pretty different in the comics. On the show, he's got that chunky, armored Christian Bale Batman thing going on, but in the comics, it's basically just a solid black bodysuit. And in the comics, Black Noir is eventually revealed to be a clone of Homelander, which we're pretty sure is not the case on TV after seeing Queen Maeve lift up his mask in Season 2. Like the show, the comic Steve is a less prominent member of the Seven, and he's actually barely in the comics at all, but he's also one of the show's biggest changes, especially in terms of look. In the comics, he's black and he wears a huge diving helmet that he can't take off due to an Atlantean curse, so you barely ever see his face. So he looks a lot more like something out of BioShock than the skinny Aquaman-y version that Chase Crawford plays on TV.
Hello!
Oh my God. Hi, my Nana's your biggest fan. I'm Stormfront.
Another swap on the show is Stormfront, who rather than the petite woman played by Aya Cash, is a typical big burly guy in the comics that's considered by many to be a parody of Shazam. Their powers are pretty much the same, and spoiler alert for both the comics and Season 2 of the show, both versions eventually die pretty bad deaths, although in the comics, he's righteously taken out by the boys. And lastly, we've got Lamplighter, who in the comics is clean-shaven with long blonde hair and a yellow and blue costume with a blue eye mask, whereas on screen, he's a lot scruffier with a Green Arrow-esque hood and tinted goggles. And spoiler alert again, the two characters have much different endings, where TV Lamplighter lights himself on fire, but comic Lamplighter gets turned into a brainless zombie by Vought. Translucent was never actually in the comics, and the comics' Martian Manhunter-inspired Jack from Jupiter was deemed to be too out there for the show. But with more seasons of The Boys coming up, there will no doubt be many future members of the Seven to scrutinize. And we'll be here to do that, so keep coming back to Screen Rant for more. I'm Greg Elliott, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.